I've been part of the prosecutor's office now for 33 years, and I started as a deputy prosecutor in our special assault unit, working with women and children in sexual assault crimes. And what I recognize as a prosecutor is there's a huge range of behavior. There are sexual psychopaths who are not safe and will never be safe to be among us. And our state in Washington was one of the first to have a sexually violent predator civil commitment scheme, and we use that in these extreme cases where people have many dozens of victims and will never really be safe to be at large. It's a treatment within a secure setting. There is a way to get out, but and we went from that to also having what we call a determinant plus scheme. So if a person is convicted even on their first sex offense, they potentially can be held for life by our parole board if they exhibit the kinds of mental disease and defect that makes them continuing danger to the community. So that's really on that extreme side, and it's an important tool to have for people who everybody knows is going to get out and do something terrible. Let's not let that happen. Let's instead make sure that they are safe so that we're safe. On the other part of it, though, where we have more common sexual assaults that happen maybe in a dating relationship or maybe on campus, or often what we see is that it's really a situation where the men involved, young men and young women, are not communicating or have different expectations, where the men have been acclimated by their culture to be more aggressive. And one of the things that we're doing in Seattle is a program that we've adopted called Boys to Men, coaching boys to men. It gets into the athletic field. So we want that locker room talk to be different. Sometimes people say locker room talk as an excuse for talk that disparages women. But what this program does, coaching boys to men, is to pick some of the leaders on that team and have the coach involved, and there's a curriculum, and the leaders and the coach decide, on our team, we respect men who respect women. And the talk in our locker room is not going to be disparaging about women. We're not going to use language that would suggest that women are sexual objects, and we're going to respect them the same way we respect our mothers and our sisters. And if somebody on the team starts to go in a different direction, that the leaders of the team can say, no, that's not how we do things on our team. It's really about building young men and their esteem up so that they don't have to put women down. We have a number of high schools in Seattle that do this, and then the University of Washington football team, which is one of the best football teams in the country, has invited my office in 2 years in a row now to give a similar kind of presentation to the young men on the football team about how to avoid the situations that can lead to a claim of sexual assault, can lead to prosecution, can destroy careers, destroy lives. And there are some obvious warning signs that young men just need to talk about. And when their coach stands up and says, this is what I expect on my team, that we respect women, that we avoid situations where you're going to a party where there's alcohol and where people are passing out, and you have to protect yourself as a player. If you want to play on my team, you have to be above all of that. So it's really education. It's talking about things that often are unsaid and untalked about, and it's really time for us to work with young men, because ultimately sexual assault is not a woman's issue. It's a man's issue, and guys have to own this. We have to own our own behavior, have to own our own attitudes, and we can start by taking the reason they use the athletic team is that often on campus, those are the men that other young men look up to. So we're going to start by picking out the leaders and changing the culture and changing the language, changing the expectations. And that, I think, is a very hopeful sign and starting to catch fire in our county. Well, sexual assault is a problem across all spectrums, across all socioeconomic barriers, but often when it's not sexual psychopathy violence, that kind of extreme violence, it often is something that young men just need to be taught about how to approach women, to be taught to discuss consent, something that is so often seems to be a topic that we don't bring up, but it's such an important topic for us. So we're starting in high school, we're getting into the colleges, and I think adopting this approach really creates ambassadors for this among the thought and opinion leaders on campus. You know, one of the real challenges that we still face is the alcohol-influenced sexual assault. And these are some of the toughest cases for the criminal justice system to deal with, because we're always evaluating evidence. We need evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And often the situations where alcohol is heavily a factor in sexual assaults, the victim can't really remember what happened, and you know, memories fade, and it is really a difficult situation. And it would be nice if there was some way to resolve these complaints outside of the criminal justice system on those cases where it's not a case that's prosecutable, but that the man has acted in a way that's really reprehensible. It's part of changing culture. And it's also wrapped up, in my view, in the culture of prostitution. So men who feel entitled because they have money to go buy the body of a woman, I mean, to me, that is something that we need to put society's stamp of disapproval on in a very strong way, that we can end the demand for prostitution, and that the demand is where all the harm happens there. So much of this is cultural. So much of it is trying to teach these lessons before something terrible happens. But we also need a way to respond when a case has happened, when a situation has happened where a woman says, I have been raped, but there's not sufficient evidence. Unfortunately, so many of the cases come to us looking for justice and are disappointed when we say we don't have the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt because the victim can't remember what happened, there's no other witnesses. This seems to me that there still should be a way for the parties in a restorative justice process or some way to hold a person accountable for their decision making, for the way they took advantage of somebody outside of the justice system.